Happy Wednesday, guys. So, as you guys saw in the title, today we're going to be talking about red flag culture. So, some of you might say red flag culture. That is what I have deemed or titled it. And that's basically dealing with any videos or reels that you have seen or heard any of these phrases. Tell me if you've ever heard the following in any of these videos or in person. He did what? Girl, that's a red flag. Or, I don't know, man. I would never let my girl do blank. If that was my man, then I would blank. Which is very interesting to me because this is what I think is my opinion on red flag culture, because I have a beef to pick with red flag culture. I think that it has destroyed the integrity of relationships. I think that it has become really a breaking point for a lot of relationships when there was no need to be a breaking point. I think red flag culture, seeing it online consistently, has significantly played a big influence in divorces. And the funny thing about this whole thing, sad thing really, is that the people who constantly say that something's a red flag are typically the ones who don't know how to take advice themselves. In fact, try this out for yourself. The next time someone tells you that something's a red flag, just analyze that person and see how they take advice. Do they follow their own advice? Do they follow the advice of others? Or are they quick to be combative? Okay. So this isn't to say that red flags don't exist, but number one thing I need you to take away from this video is that red flags are just completely subjective. They deal solely with someone's experience as well as their insecurities that they may be manifesting onto you, projecting it onto you. And so we will talk about these things. When it comes to safety, however, that will be addressed at the end. So I'm going to start off by mentioning a story, something that I personally went through. And this actually had to do a little bit with the church. So if you are not very interested in hearing the story, you can skip this part of the video, but I'm going to share it anyways. So there was someone in whom I dated when I was in high school. And as you know, being in high school, and especially being a Christian in high school, and if you're ever dating in high school, that typically comes with not very good experience. Like I mentioned in my last video, we all come from broken homes. Well, some of you were blessed with good homes, but for those of us who came from broken homes, like we never really learned how to properly be emotionally stable. We never learned secure attachments as well. And so you bring all of that to the table when you get into a relationship. And like it usually happens, people tend to make mistakes. And so at the time, I was doing some kind of youth program, and I did have someone who I looked up to, wasn't that much older than me. But I told her about some of the stuff that was going on in my own relationship. And instead of giving me counsel and from there praying for me, she sort of pressured me, at least just a tiny bit, to, for me being like a young 17-year-old, I didn't have the emotional maturity, nor did I have the assertiveness to be able to say, hey, I don't really want to do that right now. I don't feel ready to do that. Which, by the way, for those of you out there who really care about your friends, I know that the reason why you're forcefully giving your opinion on your friend, or perhaps you're even telling them, man, you're stupid for doing that. I know a lot of you, it's because you care, but here's the thing. You cannot force someone to do something they don't want to do. If you do that, it's literally just going to cause a domino effect, a proliferation of continuous just damage control, and they're going to continue doing what they're going to do. Even if you pressure them to do something like say, oh, he did this to you, text him right here, right now, text him, right? If you do that, odds are that person's going to do it because you're pressuring them to. And later on that night, they're going to send a message and say, my bad. Or they're going to continue in their steps. People have to make their decisions on their own. That has to come intrinsically. You cannot force your opinion upon your friend. All you can do is lend a listening ear. And then from there, if you can give a counsel that you feel like that you're in a position, especially if this is something that you've had an experience with, feel free to share it, but you cannot expect people to follow your advice. It's just and that's, I feel like, is one of the biggest misunderstandings about red flag culture. People get angry at each other and point out what they consider to be red flags, but then they get angry when people don't follow them. But they have to understand we're all in a different place in our walk with life. And if you forcefully cause a decision upon someone when they're not ready, it's going to come with some unnecessary trauma. And that's exactly what ended up happening with me, is that the person whom I looked up to basically made me get on the phone with the person I liked and made me tell them that it was over. And I did that, and it just turned into a big mess. Did I stop talking to him? No. Eventually, I started talking to him again. So, what I'm saying here, guys, is when you give advice, do not do it with the expectation that someone has to follow your advice. Because in the end, even if you think you know what's better, unless it's dealing with safety, like that is completely your opinion and your experience. You never know when you're projecting your own insecurities upon someone else. So, we need to stop doing that to people. Because, like, for example, say that one girl, another example, very common one, say that one of your friends got cheated on, and later on you saw what she went through, you saw the tears, you saw the aftermath of it, you saw her during that time when she was worried about the cheating. And so now you're like, you have your own relationship and you're like, oh my gosh, like, I wonder if he is. And then all of a sudden you start going online and people are like, nah, I check his text messages. No, I read them all. Same thing with guys. Like, no, check her phone, check her phone. You never know. Right. And so, like, what I'm saying is sometimes when you see people go through things, and especially if you go to that friend, that very same friend who got cheated on, hey, this person's doing this, like, oh, he's taking longer to text me now, or all this stuff, then they're going to have their own insecurities they haven't healed from. Be aware of that. And that they might actually tell you something that may influence you to do something when there may not be something there. Like they could very well just tell you, oh no, for sure, like he's cheating when he may not. Or, oh no, for sure she's cheating, man. You know, like that kind of stuff you gotta be careful for. Oh, or she's going out with her friends until like 9 p.m. Oh, that's a red flag. So what I'm saying is red flags. Here's the thing about red flags. And I'm going to mention this and elaborate more on the end. Red flags are completely subjective unless they're dealing with safety. And it is completely based on your comfort level and what you are okay with. Okay. And I'll elaborate more later. So, quick thing. I know that people tend to weigh relationships and the values of them on different scales. So some people might say, that's my best friend, that's my all, that's my ride or die, because this person drops everything that they're doing to be there for me. Or like, this is my best friend because they've proven to me, because they heard out all my problems and they're willing to do all of these things, right? However, one thing I feel like people, especially young people, need to understand is not everyone who claims to be our friends have our best interest in mind. They very well could be someone who have never had stable relationships, and their version of loving someone and giving advice may be completely destructive, and that's just because that's where they are in their walk of life. But however, and you might laugh at the way I say it, some people claim to be our friends when really they're our ops. For reals. Like, some people have been through so much in life that they don't want to see others become in a better place. They don't want to see you rise, is what I'm saying. And sometimes they're not even aware, especially if you're young. A lot of times they're not even aware that that's what they do. Like, for example, oh, I'm going to break up with my boyfriend. Here, you break up with your boyfriend too. Does us do it at the same time? Like, you really never know. Or sometimes there may not be something there, and that friend, ooh, and this is for the guys out there, you're going to want to listen to this one, okay? You know the amount of times, take it from a girl who hung out with a lot of guys in high school, because I hung out with my brother's friend group for a little while. Do you have any idea how many guys secretly want your girlfriend, or how many guys have a crush on your crush and whom are giving you advice? And then as soon as you guys break up, they swoop on in and then they become like the person who consoles the girl that you liked. You really never know who are your ops out there sometimes. And if you do have those friends who you know would never do that, then that's great. But what I'm saying is, when people give you advice, you don't have to take it like it's set in stone. And this is a crazy part too. The amount of young people, because I work with the youth, the amount of young people that just take their friends' advice and run with it. Think about it. Say that you're like you're an intern, you're trying to learn how to build something, engineer, right? Are you going to go to the person who's also an intern, or are you going to go to the person who has experience and is able to give you exactly the steps in a clear way that is not destructive to you, right? Obviously, you're going to go with the more experienced person. So what I'm saying is, before you take your friend's advice, make sure you talk to someone who's older than you and someone who has a good track record of making good decisions or has learned from their decisions, right? So this part's important, because I think people take advice. It's like kind of like the blind leading the blind, right? And you might say, yeah, but my friend's really smart. My friend, has has had a good track record of having good judgment calls. Yeah, but they haven't been alive very long. And I will say this. Some people were forced to grow up at a really young age, so they become a lot better at making decisions, but they're still young. They still have that underdeveloped brain. So they, as good of a judgment as they can make, they're still going to have their moments. They're still human. And for those of you who love giving advice out there, be very careful how you give your advice and to who you give your advice. Because if you give too specific of advice and they follow it and it ends up becoming this huge problem, they're going to look to you as the problem person, not the fact that they followed your advice. They're going to be like, well, you're the one who told me to do this, right? Be careful how you give advice. That part's an important part too. Now, I'm going to read this one. This is from Proverbs because very interesting. The amount of people that are so willing to give their opinions so freely when they have no idea what they're talking about. Okay. Proverbs 18 actually talks about this. It says this: an unfriendly person pursues selfish ends, and against all sound judgment starts quarrels, or they start problems. Fools find no pleasure in understanding, but delight in airing their opinions. A lot of people are quick to want to give their opinions, but they do not care to get advice back. The amount of people that just want it's like almost like the amount of people that just want to hear themselves talk is a big number of people who have no idea what they're talking about. When wickedness comes, so does contempt. And with shame comes reproach. Now, I'm going to skip over a few verses here. The lips of the fools bring them strife, meaning if you listen to fools who constantly make bad decisions or say they're very young and still don't know how to make good decisions, it comes with problems when you listen to their words. And their mouths invite a beating. Very interesting, the way that the New Living International Version said that. The mouths of fools are their undoing, and their lips are a snare to their very lives. The words of gossip are like choice morsels. They go down into the innermost parts. What the book of Proverbs constantly talks about is the fact that a lot of people love to hear themselves speak, but the majority of them don't know what they're talking about. And another thing, this one's for the Christians out there. If you're taking advice from someone who's living an ungodly life, guess what fruits will come out of it? Meaning, if you follow their advice, you will only get to where they are in life, or the decisions you decide to follow through with based on their advice is going to be solely based on how just pay attention to that person's life. If they look like they're unhappy or they're constantly jumping from relationship to relationship and yet they're telling you that something's a red flag, you shall know them by their fruits. Make sure you're very careful who you decide to take advice from. Be careful because yet again, are those people willing to take advice? Watch them. Next time they want to tell you their problems, just watch at the way that they take advice and do they end up following it. Very interesting because, again, I'm going to mention this part. The amount of people that are so willing to cause destruction with their mouths by telling you what to do and sometimes forcefully. And yet when it's time to face the music, those people are gone. Or while you're crying at night because you made a bad decision, or while you're stressed out and you can't sleep at night, maybe your appetite changes and your stomach hurts, those people are sleeping soundly. Remember that the decisions you make affect only you. They don't affect anybody else, and maybe potentially the person you're with, maybe. Just because someone, and this one's a big one. Oh my gosh, I cannot wait to talk about this one. Guys, just because someone's popular on TikTok or is a famous influencer does not mean they know what they're talking about, okay? Now, here's a funny story. Do you have any idea the amount of people who claim to be Christians online? And here's a good one. If someone tells you they're a Christian and you're surprised, there's a reason for it. Like, I remember hearing Khloe Kardashian on a podcast, and they were telling her, like, oh, do you study the Bible? Do you read the Bible? She's like, yeah. And in fact, the amount of people that say, what, you're a Christian? The amount of people that are surprised, yeah, I read the Bible every day. There's a reason why people are surprised that she's a Christian, because her deeds, her actions, her fruits are not in alignment with the Bible. What I'm saying is, if you're a Christian out there and you want to take honest advice, take it from someone who actually lives by the word. Because if they're not living by the word, there's only one other way that they're living: by the standards of the world. And don't get me wrong, there are some people who aren't Christians who do have very great advice, specifically when it comes to financially and other things that are like more knowledge based. But when it comes to living a good Christian lifestyle, taking advice from someone who isn't living the lifestyle is just going to lead to paths of not great decision making. And another thing too, when it comes to influencers, they're trying to reach a big number of audience, meaning that say they have like 4 million followers or 10 million followers or like even 500,000 followers. They know that when it comes to keeping people accountable, this is an interesting quote. One of my friends who works in mental health actually told me this. He said most people are not seeking advice because they want to hear that they're wrong or that they want to actually change their ways. Most people seek advice because they want validation. And most of the times when you try to give them corrective criticism, constructive criticism, they are at some point they just shut off and they don't want to listen. Okay? So basically, all this to say is that influencers care about what will give them followers. They're not going to give you the unfiltered truth unless that's their brand to do that. And even then, they're still going to hold back because there's certain things you can't say online without losing a good number of followers. If you rub people the wrong way, you guys see how quick people are to unfriend people, how quick people are to unfollow people, right? Despite the fact that they could spend like years watching an influencer, the moment they say something that they don't like because they're not ready to hear it, unfollows. And influencers are very conscientious of that. They'll give you advice, then they'll click off the recording button, and then they'll sleep soundly at night while you are now facing the music. Here's another one. Most people our age have no idea what they're doing. Meaning that, like, okay, there's some people who are in my age range. I'm in my mid 20s. Well, just about my mid 20s, yes. So I'm in my mid 20s. And so when I go to people in my mid 20s, specifically people who have not reached to that point of maturity yet, they're going to give you the opinion solely based on the way the United States culture is. United States culture says improve your finances, get to a better place, have more property, reach higher standards, continue to move up the ladder. That's how capitalism works, okay? Meaning that the majority of the advice that people our age are going to give you is going to be solely based only for yourself. Save your money so you can travel and you can post pictures of you traveling. Save your money so you can buy a house before you're 30. And all of this advice that they're giving you are not the majority of the time going to be based on the nuclear family. For some of you who actually want to get married and have children or even go do missionary work, like the majority of the time they're going to give you advice that is mostly based on the world, is what I'm saying here, okay? And most people our age are still trying to get it together. I mean, even me, like, even as I give you this advice, I'm like, take it with a grain of salt, okay? Which is why I'm reading from the Bible, because that is ultimately way more wise. Those are the words. The book of Proverbs talks about the words of King Solomon, a man who literally lived almost every possible thing you can possibly live. Multiple women, multiple wives, had all the riches of the world. And yet he said all of those things were vain. None of those things matter. None of them under heaven. And so I'm aware of the fact that I haven't lived very long, but the advice I do give is the kind that comes from my experience, and you can take it with a grain of salt. And so, continuing on, if you give advice, if you take advice, make sure that it's from someone who has shown that they have learned from it and live a better life because of it. Now, next one. Pay attention now this one's big. Okay, this one's really good, okay? Pay attention who you turn to advice for and for what. Meaning, I may go up to my sister, one of my sisters, she's so straight up, okay? So if I want the honest, brutal truth, I'll go up to her and I'll say, hey, what do you think about this? And she's just going to completely give it to me. She's going to completely tell me exactly what she's thinking. Now, sometimes when I know I shouldn't be doing something and I know she's going to tell me I shouldn't do it, I don't go to my sister. I go to someone else, maybe someone else. And again, not because I want actual advice, but because I want validation. It's almost like you want someone to give you the permission to do something. So pay attention who you turn to when you know you're not supposed to do something. Who do you turn to for that advice? And then what are those people telling you? Because if it's those people who you turn to do the things that you know aren't okay, and they're telling you, boy, that's a red flag, or girl, that's a red flag, that's a huge indicator right there, okay? Who you surround yourself around a lot of the time shapes your own mind, okay? So pay attention to that, okay? Now, here's a big thing. When you ask for advice and someone gives you red flag, oh, that's a red flag, right? Are you truly seeking to learn? Are you truly going into it with the mentality of what can I learn from this? Or are you solely seeking validation? Okay. Because if you do that, you have to check your mindset. Because if you're in a mindset where you solely seek validation and you're not seeking to earnestly learn something, you are very likely to take that advice and do something you may regret later. And that actually transitioned to something really good here. Whenever someone gives you advice, never act in that day. Never act that same day. Now, I'm going to repeat it again. When someone gives you advice, never act that day. Sleep on it, pray on it, and maybe even the next day if you want to take another day, depending on how big that decision is. My point being that you cannot make decisions in a rush, because when it comes to your life, some of these actions will seriously come with consequences, some that are irrepressible. And it's sad when you try to fix it and put the puzzles together, little pieces together, but it's already too late, and then it comes with scars. So never, and especially do never make never make a decision when you're feeling very emotional. When you're feeling emotional, your breathing a lot of the times is dysregulated, and when you don't get enough oxygen flow to your brain, you are less likely to make sound judgment, because this front part, your prefrontal cortex, is likely not able to function in the best way possible, and that's where you make your judgment calls. And trust me, you may, no matter how angry you may feel in that moment, especially when you hear about gossip, or especially when someone tells you, like, say, hey, I saw your girl over here with this person, do not react. In everything that you do, seek understanding before you react. If you see something you don't like, ask for clarification. Now, this isn't to say that the clarification that you ask for may be the truth, but always try to paint the full picture here, right? It's kind of like if you're walking in the darkness and someone scares you, you don't like you're very quick to want to punch because your brain naturally thinks of danger, right? Well, guess what? Don't allow yourself to be in the dark. Don't take your vision away. Meaning, make sure you get a clear picture of something before you react. I've had that problem in the past. So now I tell myself, when I get really angry at someone, I have to take a moment, breathe, make sure that I'm getting enough oxygen flow. I have to pray on it. I have to sleep on it. And then from there, I can actually make a decision. Here's another one. If you have a low autonomy, do not go to people for advice and then immediately apply that. So, what is autonomy before I elaborate on what that means, okay? So, I actually have a document here that I read to my young people, okay? So, it took me a moment to find it, but I found it, okay? What is autonomy? And please remember these words. If you don't remember anything else from this video, please remember this. Autonomy is your ability to take your collective memories, morals, boundaries, and your ability to not allow the opinions of others to sway your standards. Here's the test to see if you have autonomy. And now what I want you to do, if you can, maybe take out your notes on your iPhone or your Android, or pull out a piece of paper, and I want you to write down yes or no to these questions. You can even write down the questions. In fact, I would encourage you that if I'm going too fast, go back and write them down. Do you struggle making decisions all on your own most of the time? Meaning, are you quick to run to people for every little decision? Or are you sort of like sometimes ask for counsel and for the most part you're able to make your decisions? Okay, yes or no? Are you someone that relies heavily on others before you can make a decision? Are you someone to say, I can't wait to tell blank, and I won't text someone back until I know until what blank has to say about it, right? Until what Sophia has to say about it, right? Or wait until blank hears about this, and you can't make a decision on your own, or maybe spend some time alone to think about it. Do you feel uncomfortable? Here's another one. Do you feel uncomfortable expressing your feelings? Or perhaps you know how you feel, but you struggle to put it into words. After someone does something to you, you don't really know why you feel the way that you feel, and you don't know how to put it into words. You find yourself texting someone, right? Delete the text message, you rewrite the text message, you delete it again, okay? Maybe it might be out of fear of seeming like your needs are too much. Maybe you don't want to text someone because your needs may feel like they're a bit too much. Yes or no? When problems arise in your life, are you likely to panic and go in search of others? Do you sometimes need someone to go with? Oh, this one's big. When you're about to make a decision, do you need someone to go with you and stand right there? maybe sometimes even speak for you. There's one more I'm gonna share here. Okay? Whenever you have felt that you have messed up, made someone feel bad, made someone angry, perhaps let someone down, are you quick to change your behavior to please others? Say that you're like, hey, what I notice that when you hang out with a certain friend, you tend to be very touchy, for example, and I just don't appreciate that. Like, I was wondering if we could talk about that. And they're quick to be defensive, like, man, I can't even have friends, or like, or just be upset at you. If they're very quick to do that and you're quick to change your opinion just because you don't want to make someone upset, if your answer is yes, I'm quick to do that, you have a low autonomy. In fact, if your answer was yes to the majority of these questions, you have a low autonomy, meaning you're someone who has to be very careful who you take advice from. Sleep on it, ponder it, think of it, ask the opinion of someone who's older and wiser. Do not, and this is a big one, do not just go to your friends, because if you have a low autonomy, odds are you're with friends who also have a low autonomy. And if both of you have a low autonomy, you're both, even two brains together like that, will not be able to make good decision making. I'm saying this because when I learned about autonomy, I thought, wow, that's so interesting, because manipulation works that way. Most manipulators go after people who have low confidence and a low autonomy because they know that they can easily make them sway their opinions. And manipulators isn't just in the context of someone you're dating. You could even have friends. Like I said, let's go back to those ops, right? Someone who's an op is someone who knows that they can tell you what to do and you'll easily just do what they have to say because they know that you struggle with standing your ground. And sometimes you do have good standards, but because someone else has a way of knowing how to influence you, you're quick to change your mind about something. So again, if you have a low autonomy, be very careful who you take advice from and not to react in that day. Here's another one. If you want to seek wisdom and you're seeking to get closer to God and reading the Bible, reading the words of a very wise king who made a lot of really dumb mistakes and learn from them, seek to read the book of Proverbs. Proverbs 1 says, "The fear of the Lord is the beginning of knowledge and wisdom." Read the book of Romans. Paul constantly talks about behaviors that people do worldly wise and his opinions on it. Read the book of Ecclesiastes, literally talking about the things that don't matter and the things that should matter, and speaking of patience and the way we could live our lives with resilience, as well as just becoming more well-rounded people in general. Now, next thing. Before making any decision, check your breathing. And I know I've already mentioned this, but what do I mean by that? In case you didn't see my other video. Meditation. And I don't mean the yum. I'm not talking about those. When I say meditation, I mean breathe in, hold it in, breathe out. And you do that for a minimum, ideally 10, but a minimum of 5 minutes. Because here's the thing about how stress works. Cortisol is a hormone that is kind of hard to flush out of your system. Meaning that if you're angry and you just breathe in and out like 5 times, that's not going to be enough. Have you ever been angry and even after resolving a problem, you're still angry? Or when you're sad, you're still sad? Like someone did something that hurt you and then you still feel really sad about it? It's because certain hormones and certain chemicals in your body take a little while to exit from your body, to be flushed from your circulatory system. And so what you need is to make sure that you're regulating your breathing for at least a period of 5 minutes, because if you can do that, you'll feel your muscles relax. That's another sign, by the way, that you're not ready to make a decision. If when you meditate, you find out your muscles are super tense, you relax them, right? So before you make any decision or you listen to anyone's red flag culture video, you need to make sure that you yourself are in a good headspace. This is probably one of the biggest takeaways here. Nobody knows how something makes you feel but you. Someone may say, hey, the person you're dating goes out until 9 p.m. Well, that's a red flag, right? While other people may say, no, they're hanging out with their friends or they're doing sports and they decided to stay after and go get pizza or something, right? So and this is another one, okay? Let's talk about what happens when someone you're dating does something and then it doesn't bother you in the beginning, but then later on as you continue to date them, you realize over time, hey, that kind of does bother me. So that's totally okay. The most important thing is just making sure that you communicate it as soon as possible the moment you notice that it makes you uncomfortable, because the sooner you tell someone a boundary, something that you don't like, the sooner the behavior can be corrected, and the less misunderstandings that will result because of it. Now, this is important also because if you don't tell someone how something makes you feel, later on, if you address it, they're going to see it as controlling or negative. And not only that, the longer you're with someone, the more attached you're going to grow. And I know a lot of people don't communicate stuff that they think are very uncomfortable to bring up because they don't want to make someone upset. But this is what I'm going to say to you. If you aren't sharing your boundaries or something that makes you upset with the person you're with, it's likely because you're afraid that they're going to react negatively or that they're going to leave you. And here's the thing, sooner or later, that's going to become a problem. Like, problems are like the snowball effect. The more something bothers you over time, it slowly starts to snowball. And the moment it becomes a big snowball, it's going to be a lot harder to address. Everyone's going to be emotional, everyone's going to be volatile, and it's likely going to come at a snapping point. So, and later on, if you wait, the longer you wait to communicate that, you're also going to grow an attachment. And say that this is a big enough red flag that you end up breaking up with that person. Now you're going to be dealing with a heartbreak versus having broken up with them when, like earlier on, or say that you were in the talking stage, having ended the talking stage sooner. Because here's the thing, you want to save yourself the heartache. Because what I've seen a lot of people do is they don't communicate how they feel. They continue to allow people to step all over them, that by the time they do meet someone whom they feel is good for them, you already come with a lot of issues and trust issues specifically, and now you are projecting that upon that person who deserves a clean slate. Guard your hearts, guys, genuinely, because every person that you decide to or potentially interested in starting a relationship deserves a clean slate. You cannot bring the trauma you have from another relationship. If that's the case, don't date. Take that time to heal, be alone, because people deserve to have a fresh start because they weren't the ones who did that to you. Now, next thing. Now that I've mentioned all of that, let's talk about the real red flags when it comes to safety, manipulation, abuse. The number one thing you should never do when you feel like uncomfortable or when you feel your safety is possibly at risk, do not isolate yourself. Please, this is a big one. Do not isolate yourself when you feel like your safety is at risk. And here's a common isolation people don't think about. Have you ever been in a relationship, and I'm happy for you if you haven't, but have you ever been in a relationship where someone does something and you don't really know who to tell? And maybe the reason why you're not telling your friend or your sister or someone who you see as a mentor, because you're afraid they're going to judge the person you love. Like, you think to yourself, like, if I tell them that they yelled at me this way, they're probably going to tell me to leave them. Or maybe the next time they see them, they're going to say something, and you're afraid. If you're afraid to tell someone about something your significant other did, it's likely because that relationship is not good for you. And it's likely that it's a relationship that could be potential signs of abuse. I'm not saying that it is abusive. I'm just saying that, like, you should really pray and check into that. And if you're not religious, go seek counsel from someone regardless, right? Because here's the thing, if you don't get an outside perspective, you're going to have tunnel vision. You're only going to be able to see it a specific way while ignoring all of the warning signs. And it's just going to get worse. And here's another thing. I read many books on manipulation, and one of the common things abusers do is that they isolate the person they like, meaning that you only hang out with that person. Say that you're dating someone, they only want you to hang out with them during lunch. They only want you to hang out with them after school, or if you're already an adult, they only want you to hang out with them on your free time. They don't like it when your friends constantly call you. They don't like it when you're talking to your parents, or say they're upset when you are talking about you guys' private business. And it's okay if say that it's, what I'm trying to get at is that if it's okay if someone doesn't want you telling others about your business, but if they're getting upset over something like, say, hey, he yelled at me, or like, hey, he swore at me, or hey, he hit me, that's not okay. And another even worse, let me put it into worse perspective. Some of you may not know you're in abusive relationships because you have been isolated physically, meaning that, like, say you moved and now you're living alone with someone, and and say that person has all their friends there and all their family there, but you don't have any friends or family to watch you two interact. A lot of a lot of the times abusers take someone they love and they move them completely away physically from the people they love, because they know that if the people they loved saw those behaviors, that they would call it out. Another one is that they don't want your friends around you guys while you're together, or if you're, say, even married. And I hate to say this, but because I respect marriage so much, but I'm sorry, if the person you're with, your husband or your wife, does not want your family around, not even to visit, and it's for a clear sign. Like, and of course the exception is if you come from an abusive family. If you come from an abusive family and they don't want them around, that's one thing. But if you don't come from an abusive family and your significant other, your wife or your husband, doesn't want you around your own family or for them to visit, it's for a reason. And I'm only saying this because I feel like a lot of people don't catch abuse and they get judged like, how could you have been in that abusive relationship for so long? Well, if you're isolated and you don't actually have anyone to tell you, you're only going to hear from the loved ones of that person you're with, and only from their friends. And the majority of the time, they only care about the interests of their person that they care about. They're not going to say to you, hey, by the way, I'm pretty sure that my daughter's being abusive, or like, hey, I'm pretty sure my best friend is being abusive. Only very few people, good, honest people, will say, hey, get out of that relationship because my daughter or my son or my best friend is being abusive to you. Very few people actually exist like that in the world, so be very careful. If you are isolated and you live only with those people, you got to seek out and tell others a little bit about what's going on in your relationship. Maybe not like the deep details, because obviously that is to be kept private, but make sure that you're not just only talking about your relationship only with that person you're with. Because if you don't get an outside perspective, you're never going to see the abuse when it's there. In other words, keep in touch with your loved ones, especially if they're not, your loved ones are beneficial and they have your best interest in mind. Okay? Now, the real red flag, in my opinion, are the people who pressure and tell others constantly online to leave their significant other. Because I believe that in society, it's constantly being pushed for people to get into breakups and get into divorces. Because, in my opinion, this is where I'm going to get a little spiritual, and you don't have to listen to this if you don't want to. The enemy is like a roaring lion, like a wolf in sheep's clothing. If you want to destroy society, destroy the family, destroy the relationships. Because when you have people who constantly get into breakups, they come with trauma. And if you make an unstable people, you make unstable societies, people who are constantly angry at others. And if you can break apart the nuclear family, which is like having the husband, the wife, and the children, if you can break apart healthy relationships, then all that's left are broken people. And if you can manage to do that, then people are less likely to turn to God, because they're very quick to say, God, why? How could you have allowed this to happen in my life? Or I tried to, especially with good Christians, I have followed you. I have lived my life for you. How could you have allowed this to happen? So I believe red flag culture is destroying our society. You cannot say something is a red flag unless it is clear abuse. And you need to, and for those people who, and if anyone watches this video and you're like, what the heck, this girl over here is just trying to cover up abuse. No, you need to be careful who you're telling stuff to, because especially if you're a young person, and I'm saying this because I have to be very careful what I say too, and I have to be mindful of what I say. We don't know everything. And it doesn't matter if you say, well, I had to take care of my siblings at a young age. Guess what? I did too. Just because you were forced to grow up at a young age does not mean experience. Doesn't always mean good experience. And even good experience doesn't mean you know everything. There are people in their 60s and their 70s who still are in a learner's mentality. We can always learn more. And say that you're someone who's like, dang, I already listened to someone and like now I'm facing the consequences of my actions. That's okay. Forgive yourself, but write down and learn how you could handle that situation better. Do not just keep repeating the same mistakes over and over, because the older you get, the harder it is to break habits. You need to start now. That say you're making bad decisions, you have to reflect upon them. You can't just cry it all out, or maybe get drunk one night and continue to drink, or like maybe even go from relationship to relationship. If you don't give yourself time to heal and to seriously reflect the mistakes you made, you're going to keep doing them. And then you're never going to learn from them. And then you're going to become one of those really angry and upset people who are constantly posting online, all men are the same, or all women are the same, or, HOEs, don't don't get involved with them, or like all girls are a certain way, right? Bros before the HOEs is what I meant to say earlier. I know I sounded really dorky earlier, but yeah. So like we always need to have that learner's mentality, and that's one of the things I'm constantly telling myself. I'm telling you because this is something I'm currently going through myself. Okay? So this is it. That's what I have to share about red flag culture. I know it's a lot, but I just feel like people aren't calling it out enough. Guard your minds, guard your hearts. I'm praying for you guys. Take care. Have a good rest of your week.